So Shawn Stevens is also known as Red Eagle, and he is a tribal member of the Stockbridge-Munsee band of Mohicans, whose ancestral homelands cover the Berkshires and Hudson River Valley. Stevens is a culture and language helper, a storyteller, an artist, a craftsman, an indigenous medicine practitioner, a ceremonial space holder and musician specializing in traditional Native American drums, singing, dance, and flute. He is an ordained minister of the Universal Church of Light and a certified facilitator of White Bison's Mending Broken Hearts. And so without further ado, Shawn, you can take it away.
Well, thank you very much. Wow, just hearing all them accolades, I was like, geez, who is this person? I want to meet him. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I just got here by the skin of my teeth to make it on time. You know, Amanda, how long do I have for this?
Well, I would say you could take as long as you feel like you need to. We booked it until 7:30, but I'm sure, if people wanted to be here with you longer, that would be perfectly okay with us, Shawn.
Okay.
And we might save a little time at the end if people have questions. We could, select a few questions if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I share many, many, many things. So if you would like to give me an idea of what you would like me to share, because an hour and I could sit here for 6 hours and talk. But if there's certain things you want me to touch on specifically, that would be helpful.
Yeah. So I know that I'm not sure where all of the people on the Zoom tonight are coming from, but I'm assuming that most of them are probably coming from this region, whether it's the Berkshire Mountains or the Columbia County, mid-Hudson Valley region. And so I know that there's a lot of interest in hearing a little bit about, what your people's life was like here a long time ago, whatever you know and could share, want to share, and then maybe kind of what happened and what things are like now for you, because I know that there's a like a Wisconsin element, and I think that's yeah. So one person just put in the chat, would love to hear about the local history of your people here. So to find that connection.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, with our local history, our history is that we, as the Mohican people, I'll start with a little bit of language at the word Mohican. Um, James Fenimore Cooper wrote a book, Last of the Mohicans, which became a movie. Of course, you all know. But he got our name wrong. Our name is Mohican. And to be Mohican is not a person. It's people think it's a Native American person, but a Mohican, if you look at the language, there's two words together. One is Mahi, which means great, very large or big, and Hikin, which means tidal water, waters that shift in different directions. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the Hudson River is a tidal river where when the tide comes in, it flows upriver, and when the tide goes out, it flows back downriver. Now, that is our word for that is Mohican. And to say the people who are from there are Mohicaniac, or if we talk about one person, Mohicaniu, like that person or those people of the great tidal waters, of great shifting waters. And our people's lands went from the bottom of Lake Champlain all the way down to Manhattan Island, east into Connecticut, Vermont, Massachusetts, west into New York State, as far as Schoharie Creek and coming down through into the Catskill Mountains. And we had lived in this area for tens of thousands of years. But it had also said in our oral history that we came from a place before then, and that we came from a place where the waters were moving in many different directions, and that the pieces of land almost touched each other. And some people like to think that this is a Bering Strait theory, but it's really not. If you go back 14,000 years ago, and you think of the lands that was at the end of the Ice Age. Our people said that we came from the north and from the west, and we came from these places of great waters. Now, the word Mohican, you know, another word that has the same meaning is said just a little bit different. What that word is Michigan. Michigan and Mohican are the same word. It's a great large body of shifting waters. And so it's felt that our people came from somewhere around the Great Lakes area, you know, at the time when the end of the Ice Age and the waters were flowing even much larger and much more fuller than they are today. And you had all these pockets of land that were starting to sprout up. Now, through time, our people, we would inhabit an area and we would grow in population. And when the population would grow to a certain amount, the area of the woods there could only provide so much, you know, game, hunting game and such for the people that were living in that area. So they would split up into another group. Another group would move on to another area to have more hunting lands, more areas where they could find more plentiful game and fishing areas. And this kept happening through time, that our people would grow and the bands would split off into more bands, and we would make these pockets of settlements all across in northern Canada, top of the United, or in southern Canada, on the top of the United States, coming all the way over into the Hudson Valley area, what's called the Hudson Valley area. And when we came upon what's called the Hudson River today, we said, this is it. This is like, this place is like us and where we came from, these waters that are never still, these waters that are always shifting and always moving. And so we had inhabited that area from, like I said, from Lake Champlain all the way down to Manhattan Island and a lot of the areas, you know, in Vermont, Connecticut, and such. You might have heard of other tribes like Schaghticoke, Wappinger, um, and some other the few smaller bands around that surrounding area. But actually, all those tribes were actually bands of the Mohican people. You know, when you talk about your name, you're explaining where you're from. So if you were to say that you're Schaghticoke, that means that you come from where the rivers branch off. You know, so and they say Schaghticoke, but when we talk to the settlers and the colonists who came, they kind of took it as this was an entire tribe. But in fact, they were just a band of a larger nation, you know, and we have other sister tribes that we call Lenape. Some people call them Delaware today, but Delaware is an incorrect name. That's a French name given to some of these tribal people after one of the French colonists. And those tribes are the Ramapo, the Munsee, um, the Unami, the Wappinger is another one. Many of them, and they're all like what we call sister tribes. And we know this because we all speak pretty much the same language, just a radically different dialect, so to speak. Um, but we had lived there for, you know, quite a long time, thousands of years, until 1609 when Henry Hudson come up the came up the river. Now the river at that time we called it Mahikanatuk, which means the Mohican River, the great body of shifting water river. That was the name of the Hudson River for thousands of years, what we called it. And when Henry Hudson came, it's written in his journals that our people met him out in the river with canoes looking for trade. Now it's obvious at this time that our people had already heard, you know, of these people, the new people coming from across the ocean. But there was a lot of mixed reviews and a lot of mixed reports of these people. Some of them were told that we're docking on the shores and going into tribal villages and raiding villages, taking their food and sometimes kidnapping natives for slaves to take back to England. And other stories we've heard are people that came that wanted to trade, mainly like with the Dutch and the French who like to trade. They were coming to trade for animal furs and such to bring back to their to Europe. Now Henry Hudson, he was a part of the Dutch East Company, East or West, one of them companies, but he set up a fort there near Albany. Now at that time, our we had a language barrier that when we allowed somebody to come to our land and to build homes and to do such, those people would gift you with something, to be a part and be within that land and that nation. But the Dutch, they looked at it as we were selling them our land. And that was never something that we even really fathomed at the time to give away, just even with a gift, to give away land and never have that be a part of us anymore. Now, it caused a lot of tension between the two. But what started happening right away before we really could get things worked out is that a lot of the diseases from Europe, things like cholera, smallpox, measles, a lot of these things that were running rampant in Europe at the time came off the ships with the first settlers. And it went like wildfire through the whole entire nations. So many people died. Um, and so many people died that many of our people died not even meeting or seeing a white person, but we died that quickly of the diseases from the trails and the connectedness we had through villages and our trade networks and such. So many of our people died. And from what I'm told, that probably 90% of my people, the Mohican people, died of disease within the first 10 years of Henry Hudson coming. Now, what this did is it really turned our lifestyle upside down in the way that we handled things. Now, our people, we lived in what are called longhouses. A longhouse is kind of like a wigwam, but pulled straight out, a real long house to where 10, 15, sometimes even 20 families could, inhabit each house. And each house was a clan. And that clan means your family. And within that family, the head of that clan was the great grandmother. And these days, how most people take their father's last name. Our people took our mother's clan. So like if I'm Eagle Clan, my mother was Eagle Clan. I'm Eagle Clan. But if I married my wife, I as a man would go and live in her family's longhouse, and our children would all be Bear Clan, even though I'm Eagle Clan. So it's like a way of taking the mother's identity, family identity, in the clan systems that way. Now, how we handled things in villages and such that each family member had a spokesperson for them, and when the clan got together to talk about things, them spokespersons would come and they would talk about these issues or whatever it is that they're which is on the agenda for that time. And that clan, whole clan, also had a spokesperson who was the grandfather of the lodge. Now, we didn't have things like patriarchy or matriarchy. It was equal. It was more equality. I'm not sure what the word of that is, but it was equal. We did not, think men were above women in any way. That never changed until the colonists started coming with the pilgrims and such who would refuse to allow women to sit at the same table when we would feast and when we would eat and share with one another, or allow women to talk during certain gatherings and such. And this was something that we had to adjust to, especially with our numbers being so decimated, for one. And also, if we wanted to continue trade, for these items. I mean, at that time, before, the settlers came, we took everything that we needed, we got from the woods, or we got from the rivers, from the ocean, everything that we ever needed. But when the settlers came, they brought things, like metal pots and pans and utensils and colorful linens. We dressed in like furs and leather and such like that, treated leather, but we didn't have like the colorful like linens that they have, which we thought were just amazing. You know, Other things like guns, and things that just seemed that we would make our lives easier, and these were things that we wanted. So we had to adjust somehow. Now, happening with all of our people becoming decimated in the first place with disease, another bad thing that happened is that these the Dutch and the English, French, all those who were coming to the area, they brought their wars that they had from over in Europe to fight them on the lands of our people as well. And they would get people from different tribes and such to fight on their sides. And this is where it turned a lot of tribes against each other because, with the Mohican, they sided more with the Dutch in the beginning, end up becoming the British, and then eventually the colonists, where like the Mohawks were more on the side of the French, and the Huron. Uh, um, it was all different, and we found ourselves making war with one another. And if it wasn't bad enough, sorry, just getting over a cold. Uh, with the disease, they would bring our people into war, and a lot. It was quite often written and documented that they would put the Indians, out into these certain situations, like at the front of the battle. Basically doing all these dangerous things that they didn't want to have their own soldiers do. And they looked at us as expendable. And so quite a few times through history, our women outnumbered our men because so many of the men died going to war. If five went to war, maybe one came back, maybe, you know. And so this really turned upside down our way of life in our communities. Now, when our clans, when these diseases came through the villages, 90% of the village was wiped out. Where you might have had 100 people in that village, only maybe 10 survived. Because we didn't have the antibodies or the ways of fighting off diseases that we weren't accustomed to. We weren't accustomed. Our people never were exposed to these diseases in history. So where somebody from Europe might have catch the disease and survive, most likely it was a death sentence, for the Native Americans. And that's where most Native Americans died, was from disease. And when the wars started happening as well, it kept shrinking our numbers. Now, the people in the village, there were so few left, they would have to scatter and go to other villages to try to find other people that they could live with, because we were a community people. We lived in communities and we had our clan systems. But now our clan systems were being turned upside down. And the disease went through anybody, went through the chiefs, it went through the doctors, the medicine people, and scientists that we had, all the people that we had, and our knowledge keepers went through so many people that so few were left. And the scattered people had to start trying to get them to regather themselves. But while this is happening, the settlers coming are still trying to take more of the land. A lot of it come from a doctrine uh, from the Catholic Church, the right of discovery. The right of discovery is that if you came upon an indigenous group of people who were not Christians, you had the right to take their lands, take everything that they had, enslave them, and basically do what you want. That was their law that they were imposing here on our lands, not even accepting our laws, and all of this is happening. And if it wasn't right by discovery, they were trying to buy lands by giving some gifts and such to a few bands of natives who never had any right to relinquish any land. The only way that you could have done that is by the chief of the entire nation. And this was not happening. Our whole system, is all in an uproar. We didn't know what to do, but we're still having these people taking our lands or cheating us out of our lands, and we lost so much. You know, now you forward it through time, say 100 years, not even 100 years, up to 1700. Just a very few of us were left. We were once one of the strongest nations of natives on the East Coast, and we were reduced to one of the weakest and fewest. And the people that were alive then had already become accustomed to the trade goods. If you needed pots, pans, whatever, just like today, if you need something, you go to the store to get. Not many people can go out in the woods and get everything they need. Those people were long gone already. They were no longer here. You know, so the natives of 1609 were so much different than the ones in 1700. And these people from the different villages all scattered together and kind of clumped together. We started living in wigwams, more of the singular homes. We didn't live in the clan systems anymore because those had been so upended, you know, and our way of talking, like I said, our people had representatives of every family, and every clan had representatives as well, and every village had a representative, all the way up to the chief of the nation. But this was all turned upside down, and while this is happening, we're being taken advantage of, in the situation that we were in, and we lost so much land at that time. And it got to be to where our people were so desolate, so poor, so miserable. Some of the old traditional ways were no longer followed. Some people didn't believe in anything. Some people just believed, that we were just, a wretched band of human beings, and we would always have people from the missionaries coming to our people to try to convert us, and they would say, well, the reason why your people are living this way is because you've been worshiping the devil, and you're not in God's favor, and some people, of course, our people, a lot of them believed it, at first, but some kind of did. And I believe it, some of our chieftains had said, well, when we're looking at this, and we see the white man coming and they're increasing in number, even the black man is increasing in number, and our Native Americans are disappearing. We're out of nowhere. Maybe it is that we need to look and see what they're doing and emulate what they're doing because they are apparently being blessed by the Creator when we are not. So we had two chiefs of two bands at the time. A lot of our other people either were absorbed by other tribes or married into settlers. But the two bands that were left were led by Chief Conkapat and Chief Umpachini. And they had talked, for a while about, well, maybe we need to invite some missionaries to come and help us, and help like with convert us, help us learn how to make a sawmill, and make these log homes like the colonists have, um, and do a lot of these things that the white people were doing. Now, Umpachini, he was all for having them come and help with a lot of that, but he didn't really want to be converted. Where Kankapot was converted right away. Um, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here. They invited a young man, the missionary by the name of John Sargent, to come and live amongst the Stockbridge people. Now, of course, we weren't called Stockbridge at that time. They were the Mohicanic, but the village where we said we lived was called Wanahotocook. That's a real hard one to say if you're not used to it. But it basically means at the bend of the river. And like I was saying before, when you talk about who you are, you're basically saying where you're from. And so our village there was Wanahotocook, and we invited this young man, and he brought 12 white families with him to start helping teaching the natives to set up a sawmill, start teaching some of the women sewing and spinning of cotton and making fabrics. And it seemed like things were starting to look up. He's still considered a very good man in our people's history because what he did, because he's seen what was happening with all the settlers trying to really take advantage of us and take our lands. He actually helped revise a law that said that settlers could no longer buy native lands at all. Because a lot of them were seeing that there were so few natives of them. I mean, this is 1700. Not even 100 years later. And so that stuck for a little while. Our people became very grateful to John Sargent. Eventually, Umpachini did convert. You know, John Kankapad is remembered more, I think, probably because he did convert first. Um, but things were going well for a short time. And unfortunately, John Sargent, he only lived maybe 13, 14 years beyond that. And he caught disease and he died. And it's still in our records that our people were just besides themselves when he died because he was like a savior to our people. If he had not come, our people would have diminished and not we wouldn't even be here today. We'd been absorbed by other tribes, maybe married into other colonial people or killed, died just out of nowhere. But he gave us that point of being saved. Now, there's other people who tried to take over for him, you know, but unfortunately, they didn't do that well of a job. The town of Stockbridge, from the 12 white families, was growing exponentially every year. And we ended up being known as the Indians of Stockbridge, the Stockbridge Indians, they would refer to us. And they kept growing and growing, and there was two men. One of them I remember whose name is Ephraim Williams, and he is the man who Williamstown is named after, and he's also the man that Williams College is named after. Now, he's somebody that we still despise to this day because he not only was he like the town sheriff, but he also owned part of one of the general stores in which we got our trade items from. And so going through what was the French and Indian Wars in the 1750s and up to the Revolutionary War, our people always pledged alliance to our people who we call their brothers and sisters, the colonists that lived next to us. And eventually, first it was the Dutch, then it was the British, and then it was the colonists. We sided with the colonists in the Revolutionary War, and we made them a promise that no matter what, we would always offer up our men, to go and fight alongside. Their war was our war. If their bones laid in the dirt, our bones would lay in the dirt, that we would have the same fate. But we'd always ask that they kept the promise of leaving our lands alone. Now, what happened is when in the Revolutionary War, when our men were off fighting, Ephraim Williams would offer a line of credit to the women if they needed anything. Like saying, "Oh, if you need anything, come and get it. I'll take care of you." And what he wasn't saying is he was raised such a high interest rate that it was impossible to pay it back. I mean, you can even look at some of the documents today. Large tracts of land having to be given up because of a couple pots and pans and maybe some utensils or so. Just the price of it was just crazy. you know and the thing is that there was the law that you couldn't buy native land anymore. But if a Native American owed you money, now if anybody owed you money and they couldn't pay it back, you went to debtor's prison. Okay. And if a native went to debtor's prison and all they had to offer was their land, they could write the governor of Albany. Albany was a city back then. and ask for permission to give those lands in lieu of their debt, you know. And there's still lots of letters that we still see to this day that we're pretty sure weren't written by natives. They were probably written by Mr. Williams, saying, "Please, Mr. Governor of Albany, I'm a poor, desolate Native American. I'm poor, and I'm just, just made themselves sound just so terrible, and asked for permission, to give Mr. Williams their land in lieu of their debt to get out of debtor's prison." And this happened a lot. They're sending our women to prison, and they'd have to write these letters off to Albany, and we lost so much more of the land. Now, by the time our men came home, the few that did come home, and realized that even a much larger part of our land base near the Stockbridge area was gone, it was very disheartening. And Mr. Williams, at that time, he decided he was not going to any longer uh, offer any trade goods with us. It was his plan to pretty much starve us out. That if we didn't have our trade goods, we couldn't survive. And so they pressed us and pressed us until the only thing we could do was just let go of the last little bit of our lands, with permission from Albany. And we accepted an invitation from the Oneida tribe in New York, in Oneida County, New York. And we both we both fought on the same side of the war. We fought for the colonists and such, and they said, "Well, come on over here. You guys come stay with us. We've got plenty of land. We'll let you, buy some of our land." So we went over there and we stayed there, right at the end of the war. And that was, I can only imagine the feeling, that we're all fighting to make America America, and fighting for the people in our town there who, in the end, just wanted to get rid of us anyway. So when it was over, it was like a thanks, pat on the back, and a boot in the rear end, to say, like, "Now get out of here, because you're savages, and savages can't be trusted. They're only good for war, and now that the war's over, we have no need for you," basically. It even says in like the Constitution about the merciless savages of the land and such. And even though George Washington benefited by our people, won many battles because of our people, we still did not get that promise, that we would be their ally to the end, to the death of our own men, that if we could still have our own, let our lands be left alone, and we did not get that promise. And so we stayed there for a period of time. That's beginning like 1783. And there was still a lot of tension between the colonists and Great Britain, which is the reason for the War of 1812 and such. But uh, it's at a time where it's kind of uncertain. Our people living in Oneida County, because we had a chief, Opamut, his name was, and we had a very strong female leader by the name of Lori Dockstader. And they were at odds because Opamut wanted to accept another offer from some other people who lived down in Indiana. These are other Lenape sister tribes that I explained to you earlier. But Lori Dockstader, she wanted to stay in Oneida County, New York, because things seemed to be looking up. The lands were good. We were amongst people who, didn't seem to mind us being there, but Opama was afraid of raids that were still happening on Native American lands and villages. And he wanted to move his people further away from the east here. Now, one of them raids happened to a group of our people in Hutton, Ohio, in the I want to say this early 1790s, to where a group of Lenape people who were led by a Mohican man set up a village in Hutton, Ohio. And they were all converts. They dressed in regular colonial clothes. They rode in horse and carriage or carts or whatever you want to call it, and they were Christians as well, but they were come upon by a group of Pennsylvania militiamen, and you can research this too. If you research Jeanette Hutton, Ohio massacre, these militiamen accused them of being in cahoots with the British, basically, and they were trying to figure out what they were going to do, with them. So they put them all into these little cabins that they had, that were their own cabins. They packed 90 of them into a couple of cabins, and they sat there and discussed what they were going to do. And their decision on what they were to do was that they were going to execute all of them, all men, women, children, old people, every single one of them. Every single one was clubbed to death, and they were left there, and they basically just threw a bunch of wood on top of them, burned the bodies, and the bodies stayed there for about 10 years until one of the preachers, the priests, colonial priests that used to come and visit them, came and he collected all of the bones and he put them into one pit and actually did a burial there. There's a mound there now with a museum and everything in that area that explains the whole massacre that would happen there. And this was something that our chief, was afraid of happening in New York, and so that they wanted to move our people further off over towards Indiana to where it was more safe, more around where like the Shawnee and other tribes that were still had a little bit of power left, and but with this disagreement between him and Miss Dockstader, he won out. He won out, and the tribe decided that they were going to sell the lands that they got in Oneida County, New York. They were going to send a group of people to head down to Indiana with, the oxen and the carts and all the tools that they would need to set up a sawmill and build a church and start having lumber ready for the rest of the people for when they came. But what happened is it took probably 6 months for them to get from Stockbridge down to Indiana. But what happened in between there is that the governor of Indiana forced the Native Americans of Indiana to sign a new treaty. That treaty, of course, took more of their lands away from them and also banned any New York natives coming to stay there. Because not only were our Stockbridge people coming to stay, there was some of the Oneidas who were coming and some of the Brothertown tribal people who were coming. But at this time, by the time our people got there, they realized that, it was this new treaty happened. The land that they thought that would be there wasn't there. And the land that they came from was already being sold off. So we found out at that time that we were homeless, and the sad thing about it, with tribes like mine, Andrew Jackson wanted to have the Indian Removal Act to remove most tribes west of the Mississippi River, and to send us out that way. But we didn't want to go, because west of the Mississippi River, you had more of the Cheyenne and the Lakota and people, and they were just starting, getting their wars were starting at that time, and we didn't want to go. And so we asked the government, if we could speak with other tribes that are still retain their land, if we could actually find a place we could, stay. And so we lobbied with the Menominee people in Wisconsin about buying some land there, and they agreed. And so we bought some tracts of land, and we moved to Wisconsin. That was right around, I want to say, the 1820s ish, around there, and we stayed there for about another 20 to 30 years. And and as far as politics go, we had a disagreement with the Menominee who were telling us then that they didn't sell us the land, that they were just renting it to us, but we had to move off of that land, and they would give us another spot, which is the corner of their reservation today, which is mainly swampland. It wasn't a great place for farmers like my people were at that time. And the land that they removed us from, they sold to colonists. So that was kind of dirty, so to speak, and so that that uh that happened, I want to say around 1850s. It was around 1859 to where the reservation where we're at today was totally agreed upon. And that's in the corner of the Menominee, old Menominee Reservation today. And we've been there ever since. Now, the terrible things that were going on didn't stop at that point. Even though we dressed as colonial people, most of our people were Christian people. Uh, what was happening once you got towards the later 1800s, when the end of the wars of the natives out west with the Plains Indians and the West Coast natives, it wasn't enough for the government to have control of us on our reservations. What they wanted to do was to destroy our communal way of life. And they came up with the Indian Child Removal Act, which is the mission schools. And with the mission schools, what they did is they took every native from the United States and Canada. All native children were removed from their homes and sent to a mission school, most likely 1,000 miles away, to deter them from running away. And from those places, they were not allowed to wear traditional clothing. They were not allowed to speak their language. They were not allowed to do anything that was considered Native American. It had to be all Christian colonial style things, you know. And if they dared to even speak their language, they were beaten. And when I say beaten, they were beaten badly. Either beaten, some of them were chained up in basements in the dark for days. And it's just recently coming to light in Canada. I don't know if some of you follow the news and that such, but many thousands of children's graves have been found by some of these old mission schools. So thousands of kids died going to the schools, however way, whether it was abuse or whether it was disease or neglect, whatever it was, doesn't matter. Many of them died. And if you can think of all the different types of abuse there are, they suffered it. They suffered it badly in these schools, even though these were supposed to be, church um, led schools, whether by their Catholic or Lutheran or whatever. They were very much neglected and abused. And what the ideal was, the man who come up with the idea of the mission school said, we need to kill the Indian but save the man. Okay. Now, in doing this and taking the children all out of the homes at 4 years old up to 18, a lot of them didn't get to come home till they were 18 years old. And by the time those kids came home, they were so much different than the rest of the people in the community. And this caused a big divide amongst the people in the community, you know, and a lot of, people, of course, they were growing up a certain way and they didn't believe in the traditional cultural ways and such. And there was a lot of arguing and fighting in every tribe. Every single tribe had this problem. And uh, along with the mission schools, you go up into the 1960s, where many Native American women, this is all stuff you can Google and check up on. Many Native American women who were going in for their first childbirth were being sterilized by hospitals. They would trick them into signing papers that they didn't even know what they were signing, but they were sterilizing Native American women so they couldn't have children anymore. You can only have a few, and this was part of government plan from years, even back with Andrew Jackson, who said he wanted to make sure that there was no Native American tribes by the year 2020, you know, but no, we're still here, and things didn't really start even looking like they were going back towards our direction until 1976. My years might be a couple years off, 76, 78. But that is where the Indian Religious Freedom Act was passed, which made it so where it was actually now legal that Native Americans could actually practice their own religion. Until 1976, 78, it was illegal. Now, I was still alive at that time. To think that, our people's traditional ways and our religious ways were illegal, that, we could be put in jail for it. And this caused a lot more problems, for our people who were traditional. They had to hide these things, from everybody, not just hide them from the white man. They had to hide them from our own people, because our own people would turn them in if they found out, because they were raised to believe that was ways of the devil, and it was bad, and so this is what caused so much of our people to be against one another. And it's part of the government's plan that if you can take these people who are nations within this nation, and if you can make them fight amongst themselves, you'll never have to fight them again. And that was kind of their plan, to kind of upend who we were as a people and keep us against each other. You know, a real quick story, about the intergenerational trauma that happens, with the children who went to the mission schools. Um, it was probably about 15 years ago or so. My mentor had told me that he wanted me to go to this training, and it was at the White Bison Society. It was about intergenerational trauma and healing unresolved grief. And as a person that I try to help, be a helper and heal and do good things for people, I took his advice and I went there and learned about it. And was the first time I heard about the mission schools. So many people have not heard of it. And even Native American people, I did not hear about this. And they taught us about the mission schools. And I remember watching this one video of this woman, and she's talking, and she's saying, she said her mother went to the mission schools, and her mother, in raising her and her siblings, was all about discipline. She said that her mother would beat them with brooms and with sticks and leather straps and things, and just have like this explosive anger, you know. And she said, but I know our mother loved us, but she never told us. And I had this epiphany in my mind, and I'm thinking, wow, that's my story. My mother was the same way. She beat us, with sticks and brooms and whatever was handy. She had the explosive anger, almost like she was angry at something else, but she did it anyway. And my mom was the same way too. She never said she loved us. I know I've heard her say things like to her friends or stuff, how she loves her family or whatever and stuff, but she could never look you in the eye, and say that she loved us. And so in these teachings and what they're showing us, they're saying, when you see these things that you're realizing aren't right, we grow up thinking that they're normal, but then you realize it and you know that they're not right. It's up to you to break that link in the chain, because these kids growing up, they're gonna replace us someday, and they do what we do. They act the way we act. They're our replacements. And if we don't want our children to have to grow up with that pain, we need to figure out how to change that. you know and so I'm thinking to myself, like, yeah, that makes so much sense. And I'm thinking on how my people are back home. And so many people like to think on Native American reservations that everybody gets along and everybody's loving, we got each other's back. And that's not true. We're still arguing and fighting amongst each other because of these things that were put on our people generations ago. Even as far as, one or two generations. My grandmother went to these schools, my grandfather, you know, and, I come to realize that, it wasn't so much that my mom just had explosive anger and then disliked us and just liked to beat us with stuff. That's how she was raised. She was raised that way. And her mom and her dad were raised that way. And it goes back to the ones who were at the mission schools who were raised that way. There was no hugs. There was no love. There was nothing. You just got beat. And if you saw somebody else getting beat, you had to shut your mouth or you were next. And that's kind of like I remember my mom even saying things like that, and those are things that come down through the generations. So it kind of upsets me when some people say, well, you weren't alive back then when all that bad stuff happened. So what do you care so much? Well, it's because our people are still dealing with this. We haven't all healed yet, you know. And I remember talking with my mom on the phone, and I'm kind of devious, and I'm thinking, I'm going to ambush her at the end of this conversation. I'm going to tell her I love her. I want to see what she says. So talking with my mom, I was all right, Mom. I'll see you next week, and I just want to let you know that I love you. And I heard her, kind of get caught up, and she's like, "Oh," I love you too. And it was a weird moment because I never heard my mom say that ever. And it has kind of like a happy ending because it was almost like it freed her to say it's okay to say those things. You know, she started saying that to all of my siblings, and we're all grown adults at the time, saying it to all the grandchildren, and we're telling it to our kids and everything as well. We say it to our siblings, only in passing, like, okay, take care, guys, love you, see ya. And it still feels weird for me to do it, to say it, because we were not raised that way. It feels weird, but it's right, you know. And the generations that are coming up, younger ones, they say it no problem. They can say, I love you to anybody, then it's nothing to them. They don't have that uncomfortable feeling that I had, or that my siblings had, or my mom, or my grandmother. They don't have those feelings, because we came out of our comfort zone to change that. And we had to change that, and it was such an amazing story. And I feel so lucky that our family were able to do that, because I know a lot of families still have people who can't do that, you know, and it's a shame. It's a shame that, a lot of people can't bring themselves to it, you know. But when you see those things, you got to make the change. You got to make that change, even if it's uncomfortable to you. Otherwise you're part of the problem instead of part of the solution. You a lot of these things that were happening, and many of our people who didn't want to be cultural, didn't want to be traditional, always brought up being told bad things, and such. That something special happened in 1992. This is with the year where Native American prophecy came to realization, or came to fruition. And it's the prophecy of the white buffalo calf woman. Now, it's a long story, so I can't share the whole thing, but it's basically a story of a higher being spirit, the white buffalo calf woman, who came to the Lakota people and gave them their teachings of how to live as family, how to do ceremony, how to live as a community, how to help one another, and having respect for all things of life and such, and that was how they were to live. And she gave a warning that one day, the people are going to go away from those things, but they're going to need to come back because the world is going to be sick, and people are going to be sick spiritually, mentally. And they're going to, when that sign comes, they need to get back to those ways. Okay. And that white buffalo calf prophecy came to light in 1992, where buffalo named Miracle was born in Janesville, Wisconsin. Actually, the same city I was born in. I love that fact. That's so cool. Uh, but it was born in oral history and written history. There's never been a white buffalo calf born. She was the first. And I've seen people change, even if my own reservation. I don't know if they knew the prophecy or not, but it was a big thing. People came from all over the world to visit this white buffalo calf. They're leaving flowers on the fences and cards and ribbons and all this cool stuff, And I started seeing more Native American people who were getting more into their culture, getting back to their culture, wanting to learn their language, wanting to learn some of the ceremonies that the old ones used to do, you know, so many things that were happening. And There's other prophecies, such as the Hopi prophecy or the Rainbow Warrior prophecy, that one day the world would become sick, and indigenous people would need to share their ways to help other people reconnect back to the earth because so many people become disconnected, you know, and I really believe that we are in that time, and sharing with Native American people and what's happened to us in the last several hundred years. What's happened to us has happened to so many other people. The people of Europe, when the Romans came through and took the Celts and the Druids and took their languages away, murdered so many people, slaughtered people, forced them under a new way of religion and such. The same thing happened, and it made so many of the people become disconnected of understanding that we're all indigenous to this earth and we all had similar ways of community and taking care of one another and respect for the land, respect for the waters, respect for everything because that's where we got our life from, you know. And even my own mentor, one of my mentors had told me when he was younger that one of his mentors said, nobody wants to hear anything from us right now. Nobody cares. He said, but one day they're going to come. They're going to want to know. And we're going to have to share. We have to share that because it's to help the earth. And not only do we have to do healing for ourselves, we have to help other people heal themselves as well. And it's healing for the whole entire earth. And I think it's so amazing because when I share that intergenerational trauma story, and like with, how parents can be that way, and as children, we feel that it's something personal and stuff, that I share that story with many non native people who had similar experiences. And it's like, oh my God, like my dad was the same way. And I always just thought that like he kind of hated us or whatever. But now when I really think about it, that's how he was raised. He was raised that way. So he raised us the same way. So now I can move into a point where I can actually forgive him, for what he did because he had that done to him as well. And that's part of that prophecy, of us sharing, because we have our own healing to do. We have to heal our ancestors. We have to heal in our ancestor, heal the past, heal ourselves, to make sure that what we leave behind is much better for the next 7 generations and beyond, because they're going to inherit what we leave behind. And we've got a choice. What are we going to do? And we got to come out of these comfort zones that we get into and being closed off from the rest of the world, and be open and share with one another. I mean, science will tell you all humans are related. All humans, animals, plants, even fungus are all related. We all come from the same tree of life, you know, and we're all family. And none of us can fix the earth, fix these problems all on our own. We have to break down those barriers of us and them people, and realize that there's only us here on this earth. We all go up to the moon and say, okay, where are you from? We all point to the same place. Mother Earth is it's where we're all from. We're all family, and so, so many of these things that bad have happened. And I always tell people, I don't share these things to place blame or to make anybody feel bad or anything. But I do it because it's something that was never taught in our schools. They never taught these things. And when you don't realize these things of the past, if you know more of the true history of the past, you can actually thwart repeating those things in the future. You know, so if we know these things, that's why I do that. I share it so we don't make these mistakes again. So we don't have to victimize other people, the victims becoming victimizers, and there's a lot of healing to do, and we all need to come together, realize that we share this one little earth, and we all have to work, recognize each other as family, and our children, the next 7 generations and beyond, need us to do just that. Because if we don't do something different, we're leaving them pretty terrible, terrible inheritance, you know. So in this time, we're in a make it or break it time, So what are we going to do? What can we do? Do we keep looking at the us and them? I mean, over 10,000 years of civilization. And we're supposed to be the smartest beings that ever walked the earth, but we can't stop having wars because we think people are different, you know. But we can't seem to think that, geez, we're all related. We all come from the same place, and we all want the same thing as to live in peace, to have some peace for our children and our children's children and so forth. So we either become part of the problem or we become part of the solution. And that's part of what I do in sharing all these things, these terrible things I've shared and stuff, and realizing that we all have healing to do, and the world depends on us. Our future generations depend on us. That's why the truth needs to be told so we don't make these mistakes again. So we can look out there and see, geez, look how poisoned all these places are. The Hudson River, the Housatonic River, all these other rivers that are just poisoned, because people become so disconnected. And so that's where we feel as stewards of the land that we need to remind everybody we're all connected to the land. What we're doing to it, we're doing to ourselves. And it's 4:07, so I guess I better stop there.
Shawn, thank you so much. I think I can speak for all of us when I say that I just really appreciate that you came to us on Zoom and shared these stories with us. I wanted to know if you had a few minutes in case people have questions. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
So for the
Yep.
questions, you can either type those into the chat, or you could raise your hand and unmute yourself and then just ask Shawn a question. Okay, here's one from Lost Lamb Patisserie. Oh, Lost Lamb Patisserie is in Stockbridge. She says, thank you for this beautiful talk.
You're very welcome.
Oh, we've got one hand raised here. Let's see. Helen O'Toole. Helen, you can go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Shawn. Thank
Hello.
Thank you very much. That was really wonderful. I just had the privilege of getting a wonderful book from the Chatham Library, and it's called Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. Is that the name of the book by Dee Brown? Yeah, and I have to do a book report. At 60 years old, I have to do a book report for school. And that's exactly what I was doing it on, was intergenerational trauma. So I'm going to be sharing that with a bunch of people, and you really, I'm so glad I got a chance to listen to you, because it's, I think it's a very important thing that, we do look at these things. But my question for you is that what can we do? My mother's Puerto Rican, my father's, from a European, Irish and Polish background and stuff. And, so many times I just wanted to reach out. Like, I'm even a school teacher, and I thought I would just love to teach at a reservation. But then I saw the challenges and stuff. And I said, often ask myself, what is it, that others can do, to be part of this, helping people to heal. I'm also a shaman. So I do a lot of energy medicine. So I said, well, what is it? What can we do to help with this trauma?
Yeah. Yeah. I get that question a lot. And I always say that the best thing you can do is remember what I told you. Remember the story. Remember the truth. Share the truth. There's a lot of healing that needs to go on yet. And understanding, all of our connections to the earth, because the earth is, with the pollution, global warming and such, it's telling us that, it's becoming sick, and we all need to do something, whether it's as little as picking up cans or plastic on our walks or whatever, or getting involved in certain nonprofit organizations that help with cleaning up, and just remembering that your fellow man is family. No matter where they live in this world, we're all family.
Thank you, Shawn. I'm just going to read a few of the messages that have come into the chat. And then I
Okay.
think we have one more hand up, at least one. So we have Marilyn Gross, and she said, "Thank you. You are a very wise man. The story of your people is heartbreaking. But heartbreaking can also be the beginning of healing, I think." And then Christine Cottom asked, "What can we do to support Native American people today?" Which is the same question that Helen also asked, and you answered so beautifully. So I'm just going to scroll down and see more messages here. Elizabeth says, "Thank you so much. Can you speak to the relationship of the Mohicans to the Moravian mission?"
A lot of Mohicans went to the Moravian missions, yeah. And they were absorbed by you have um uh, the Munsee of Moravian Town in Canada. They identify more as Munsee, but they absorbed many of the Mohican people, back in the 1700s as well. The Moravian mission also. You had Moravian and Stockbridge Mohicans, but they basically were absorbed by that tribe. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then we have a comment from Frank Cronson, and he says, "Thank you, Shawn Stevens, Red Eagle," and he has little images of the earth and of the praying hands for you. And then,
Oh,
yeah, and then we have Sarah Price. She said, "Did the Mohicans have mounds like are found near St. Louis? Mounds."
not that I know of.
Okay.
There's a lot of like rock wall structures. Some are from the colonial people. Some were from the Native American times as well. But depends on who you ask. Native Americans, especially on the East Coast here, not many of them have the remembrance of what they were actually for. And go a little deeper, some of them say that Native Americans didn't make them at all. The giants are the ones who made them. Whole different story.
Okay. We have another question here from BB, and she says, "Thank you for sharing with us today. Do you have a public email I would like to contact you?"
Sure. She just wants to get a hold of you. If you have my email.
Yep, that's perfect.
Anybody
So,
would-
yep, so BB, you can just reach out to the Chatham Public Library and I'll share that email address with you directly, okay? Okay, now we have, I'm going to take a pause here and let Suzanne, I'm going to ask you to unmute, Suzanne.
Thank you. Thank you, Shawn, for sharing with us and sharing your knowledge with us. We weren't taught that in public school growing up. And so thank you. And we'll continue to learn and read. And I've been doing that. I do live in the Hudson Valley. I just moved here a year and a half ago, and I understand that the woods behind my house is burial ground, Native American burial ground. And I keep it undisturbed and respected. Is there something else I can be doing or a symbol that I can put up, or what would your advice? I've tried to look it up and haven't been successful.
As if what you can do for
The spirits. I mean, I'm kind of looking, I believe in spirits, and
Okay.
yes, and
Gotcha.
so I want, and it's very peaceful here. I live here very peacefully with this land. So, but I also want to respect it even more if I can.
Well, what we do is we give offering of tobacco and sometimes what we call a spirit plate. So a plate of food, and we put that out there in honor of those who lived in the land and for the land. And I always tell people, if you're giving that respect and honor to my ancestors, they would love that. And to know that you're somebody that is treating the land very well, very good, and also remembering the people who actually came here as well. And when you put that spirit plate out there, of course, all little creatures of the forest come and have themselves a little, feast, and they eat it, they digest it, they excrement it, and the plants benefit from that fertilizer. The plants grow, which feed more of the animals, which keeps going in a cycle. So what it is that you're actually giving life to the forest by putting out that spirit plate and recognizing, the ancestors and such. But the spirit part of it, they like that recognition. But you're also giving life to the forest by putting a little food out there. Where most people throw it away or whatever. But that spirit plate, it's giving life to the land again. But it's showing that you're giving something and giving recognition to the people that were once there, to the spirits that are still there, the spirits that were there long before my people even came. That the land loves recognition when you look at it as a living being.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Shawn. Time for just a couple more questions, or you kind of tapped out?
What's that?
Do you have a few more minutes for a few more questions, or are you starting to feel tapped out for the night here?
No, I've been doing this all month long. I'm good. Keep 'em coming.
Okay. Janet Cassidy is asking, do any of the Mohican people still live in the Stockbridge area?
We have a lady who works as our repatriation officer for the tribe who lives up in Williamstown.
Okay.
And we do have another gentleman who lives near Albany, actually. But as in Stockbridge, there's nobody who lives there. That's
Okay.
part of the tribe.
And then a comment from Greg Berninger, and Greg I know is a historian in this area. And Greg says to you, thank you, Shawn, for telling yours and your people's story in such a meaningful way. Much love to you.
Oh.
And then, yeah, that's very nice. We have Catherine. She says, thank you for the overview you've given us on the history of your people and the suffering they have endured and the strength and resilience that has helped them survive. I'm very moved by the stories you shared.
Thank you.
Dolores has asked you, have you been able to visit any of the Hudson Valley villages of your ancestors?
There's been a few sites that I've been to. My experience has been more like in the Berkshires area. I know I've been to a couple over, near, like with Shkodak Island, where it's a place where our people would, the heads of the villages every year would come together for a couple months and discuss, the national issues and stuff, and share information and such. But not so much, on the west side of the river. I haven't really been able to be over there. The Berkshires area seems to be like one of the places that it seems to be a lot of people inviting our people back, and New York's a little behind, I guess you could say.
Okay, so I'll take a question. This is my question. I actually happen to live in the Berkshires in North Egremont, Great Barrington area, and my husband and I love to hike. And my favorite place to hike is the Monument Mountain. And
Okay.
I heard recently that I guess the Monument Mountain, some of that land is going to be given back to your people. Did you hear about that?
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah.
That's good news, right?
It is. It is. That's very amazing. Like I
Good.
say, we're living in amazing times right now.
Yeah. There's a lot of
to
good
where-
changes happening.
Yeah. Right. You know, That there were the people before my people were here, they didn't want us here. Now that the people who are here want us all to come back.
Now 150 people signed up to come to the Zoom to hear you, so that's a positive change, right?
Yes.
There's one more question here, and this is an interesting one. We have someone asking, how can we know we are connecting with people who are truly of Indigenous heritage to learn more about the local history and also be able to get permission to teach others? So I guess that's the question about, are we trusting people who are saying that they are Native peoples?
That's it's very difficult to find that. Yeah. Um, I would say, well, yeah, it's hard to prove if somebody is or isn't.
Okay.
Um, like for some of us who are enrolled members of a tribe, we have got a card. I call it my papers. um, but I would say instead of worrying about that, is what kind of message are they bringing? You know, for everyone, because there are people out there who are pretending to be like from our tribe or part of the tribe, calling themselves chiefs and such like that, and it's caused as a big issue, with the tribal people, the real tribal people. But there are a lot of people out there who are not living with the tribe or are descendants of the tribe who still know the history and such. But I guess it all depends on what they're trying to put past you. Does it make sense? Does it feel right? You know, if it's just about, idealism of being connected with the earth and such, is just doesn't feel right. And ask them where they're from. If there's any other people that know who they are, verify. You know, like for me, you call anybody back home, they know who I am. You know.
Yeah.
But it's real hard. It's hard. It's a hard thing to distinguish. Yeah, on who is and who isn't.
All right. Well, we'll do one more question here. Allison, would you like to unmute yourself and do you still have your question, Allison?
Yes, and thank you so much. I'll try to be quick, and I just also want to echo what everyone has said, Shawn, and you're being so generous with us tonight. I was so moved by your vulnerability around your own wound. I'm personally doing, well, first I will say too that I'm also from the Midwest, and my father was born in Wisconsin. I'm doing some research right now with Indigenous people, play work, and grief, because I'm a clay artist and an art therapist. And I was curious to hear if like the places that if you can share this, where you personally go and your people go, how you come together to work on that grief, or to like in ceremony, or I'm sure it's done in different ways, but do you have a practice that you do to unfold all the grief that you're working through and the wounds that you're all working through?
Well, we try to slip it in whenever we can when we got people's ear, you know, because it's hard to get people to come out and to talk about their problems with other community members and stuff. I always say like living in a Native community is like living with people, all the people you went to school with. So a lot of people aren't comfortable with opening up in front of others, that they know and such. You go off to another tribe and stuff, it's easier for people to do it that way rather than opening up at their own place. So sometimes we do bring other people from other tribes in, or try to get some of our people to send them out as well. But it's a hard thing, but we try to slip it in whenever we can have a chance and people are listening.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna do this one last question. And I'm sorry if I didn't get to everybody's questions. We're just kind of running low on time here. And this one is about someone who just a sec.
I'm sorry. I just had a bad habit.
I think we better let you go for the night, Shawn, because I know you're battling that cold there, and talking all this time is not good for it. So what I'm going to do is, if people have questions, burning questions, please send an email to me. It's the email that you use to register for the Zoom. It's the same one, or contact the Chatham Public Library, and I'll take your questions and I'll try to see if I can help you get some answers. But I really don't want to keep Shawn and have him go into a coughing fit here. So thank you everyone for coming to the Zoom, but especially thank you, Shawn. You know, if it was an audience, I think everybody would be standing on their feet clapping. It was really absolutely wonderful for you to share this with us. And I just wanted to let everyone know too, obviously you're a humble person and I don't want to embarrass you, but I asked Shawn if he would like a fee for his presentation tonight, because as public libraries, we often pay an instructor fee or a fee for a lecture. And Shawn absolutely said no, he didn't need a fee. So that says something about the work that he's doing, just sharing from the heart, completely giving freely. So thank you very much, and go get some lozenges and hot tea with honey and feel better. Okay, we'll talk again soon, I hope. Okay. Okay. Bye-bye. God bless.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Hope
Thank
you
you
all
so
have
much.
a good night. Just be sure to send me an email if you have questions, and I'll try to pass them on to him, okay?
Thank you so much.
And you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.